Imagine standing on the deck of a colossal war machine, the wind whipping through your hair as waves crash against its steel hull. This is no ordinary ship. It's the IJN Akagi, a behemoth stretching 260 meters long, armed with over 60 deadly fighter planes, a floating fortress that once commanded the vast Pacific Ocean like a dragon ruling the skies. The Japanese Empire hailed it as unbreakable, a symbol of ultimate power that struck fear into every enemy heart. But what if I told you that in just one chaotic morning, this invincible giant would be reduced to a blazing inferno, its fate sealed by a single, fateful decision? How could the ship that launched the infamous Pearl Harbor raid vanish beneath the waves in a matter of hours, changing the course of World War II forever? Stick around, because this tale of triumph, tragedy, and turning points will reveal secrets of the sea that history books often overlook. Details that make the Battle of Midway not just a clash of fleets, but a gripping drama of human error, heroism, and hidden intelligence. Let's rewind to the Akagi's origins. Born from ambition, she started life as a battlecruiser in the 1920s, but visionary naval architects transformed her into one of the world's first true aircraft carriers. By the time World War II erupted, Akagi had evolved into the flagship of Japan's carrier striking force, her decks buzzing with Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters, sleek, agile machines that outmaneuvered anything the Allies could throw at them. Her crew, over 1,600 strong, were elite. Pilots trained in precision strikes, engineers who kept her engines roaring at 31 knots, and officers like Captain Taijiro Aoki, a stoic leader whose calm under fire inspired unwavering loyalty. Akagi wasn't just metal and machinery. She was a living embodiment of Japan's imperial dreams, painted in the rising sun's colors, ready to extend the empire's reach across oceans. The dawn of her legend broke on December 7, 1941. From Akagi's flight deck, waves of bombers and fighters lifted off toward Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Led by Commander Mitsuo Fukuda, the attack caught the U.S. Pacific Fleet off guard, sinking battleships like the Arizona and Oklahoma, crippling airfields, and claiming over 2,400 American lives. It was a masterstroke orchestrated by Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, who saw carriers like Akagi as the future of naval warfare, not outdated battleships. In the months that followed, Akagi rampaged unchecked. She supported invasions in the Philippines, bombed Darwin in Australia with devastating accuracy, and raided Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, in the Indian Ocean, sinking British ships and scattering their forces. No opponent stood a chance. Akagi's pilots racked up victories, her anti-aircraft guns bristled with 12.7 centimeters cannons, and her armor seemed impenetrable. The Japanese press dubbed her the Red Dragon, a mythical beast breathing fire across the seas. Morale soared aboard ship. Sailors shared stories of glory over rice and tea, believing their carrier was destined for eternal dominance. But shadows loomed. Yamamoto, a Harvard-educated strategist with a gambler's instinct, knew America's industrial might would eventually overwhelm Japan unless he delivered a knockout blow. Midway Atoll, a tiny speck of land midway between Asia and North America, became the target. Controlling it would extend Japan's defensive perimeter, luring out the remnants of the U.S. fleet for annihilation. In late May 1942, Akagi led a formidable armada. Alongside her sisters Kaga, Hiryu, and Soryu, backed by battleships, cruisers, and destroyers, a force of over 200 ships. Yamamoto's plan was intricate, dividing his fleet to confuse the enemy, with Akagi's group, under Vice Admiral Chuchi Nagumo, spearheading the carrier strikes. They carried elite air groups, Val dive bombers for pinpoint attacks, Kate torpedo planes for ship-killing runs, and Zeros for air superiority. The objective: bomb Midway's defenses, then crush any American carriers that dared respond. Unbeknownst to the Japanese, the Americans held a trump card. Cryptographers at Station HYPO in Hawaii had cracked the JN-25 naval code, piecing together Yamamoto's intentions from intercepted messages. Admiral Chester Nimitz, a cool-headed Texan with a knack for bold risks, positioned his three carriers, Enterprise, Hornet, and the hastily repaired Yorktown, northeast of Midway, hidden in ambush. Rear Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher commanded the task force, with Raymond Spruance overseeing the carriers. They knew the Japanese were coming, down to the date and approximate location. As Akagi steamed toward destiny on June 4, 1942, the Pacific was calm, but tension crackled in the air. Dawn broke at 4:30 a.m., and Nagumo ordered the first strike. 108 planes from the 4 carriers roared off toward Midway, including 18 from Akagi, Zeros, Vals loaded with 800 kilograms bombs, and Kates with torpedoes. The pilots, fueled by Bushido spirit, expected another easy win. Radar on Midway picked them up, scrambling Marine fighters, but the Zeros shredded them, downing 15 of 27 defenders. Bombs rained on hangars and fuel tanks, igniting fires across the atoll. Back on Akagi, preparations hummed for a second strike. Reserve planes in the hangars were armed with land attack bombs, fuel hoses snaked across decks, and sailors worked in synchronized efficiency. Nagumo paced the bridge, confident. Then, at 7:28 a.m., a scout plane's report shattered the calm. 10 enemy ships sighted. Details trickled in, surface ships, possibly cruisers. Nagumo hesitated. Should he recall the planes or press on? At 8:09 a.m., the bombshell, enemy force includes a carrier. Panic rippled through the command. The reserves needed rearming for anti-ship warfare, swap bombs for torpedoes. Orders flew. Begin rearming immediately. Hangars turned chaotic, bombs unbolted, torpedoes hauled from storage, fuel lines everywhere. It was a race against time, with planes from the first wave returning low on fuel, demanding clear decks for landing. Nagumo's dilemma deepened: delay the launch or risk losing aircraft. Little did he know, American squadrons were already inbound, setting the stage for catastrophe. The moment everything changed was not loud at first. It was quiet. Too quiet. High above the Japanese fleet, at 4,500 meters, Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey was running out of fuel and running out of hope. He had been circling for almost an hour with 37 SBD Dauntless dive bombers from USS Enterprise. They had launched before dawn with one mission: find the Japanese carriers and sink them. They found nothing. Fuel needles were trembling near empty. Some pilots were already whispering about turning back to Midway to land on whatever was left of the runways. McCluskey refused. He knew if they left now, the chance might never come again. Then he saw it. Far below, a single Japanese destroyer, the Erasure, was racing north at full speed, leaving a long white wake like an arrow pointing straight to the heart of the enemy fleet. McCluskey made the call every pilot dreams of making once in a lifetime. Follow that destroyer. 10:22 in the morning. The 4 Japanese carriers appeared beneath scattered clouds like sleeping giants. No Zero fighters patrolling high altitude. Every single fighter was down low, chasing the American torpedo planes that had just been slaughtered. And on every carrier deck, chaos. Akagi's flight deck was a nightmare of organization gone wrong. Mechanics were still frantically changing weapons. Bombs that had just been removed lay in neat rows. Torpedoes were being rolled toward waiting aircraft. Fuel hoses snaked everywhere. Aviation gasoline vapor hung in the warm air like invisible poison. Planes that had returned from Midway were taxiing, engines coughing, pilots desperate to get down before they ran dry. The deck officer was waving flags, trying to bring order to madness. That was the exact moment McCluskey tipped his wing. Attack. 37 Dauntless dive bombers split into sections. Most of them rolled into steep dives toward Kaga and Soryu. But 3 aircraft broke off and pointed straight at Akagi. Lieutenant Richard Best led them. He was calm, almost eerily calm. He had practiced this dive hundreds of times in training. Now it was real. 70-degree dive. Speed climbing past 380 kilometers per hour, then 400. Wind screaming over the wings. The red circle on Akagi's flight deck grew larger and larger in his bomb sight. He could see tiny figures running, tiny flags waving, tiny puffs of anti-aircraft smoke rising too late. At about 550 meters altitude, Best pressed the release. 1,000-pound bomb left the rack. For the men on Akagi looking up, it was just a small black shape falling silently at first. Then it grew. Then it was enormous. The bomb struck almost dead center, very close to the middle elevator. It punched straight through the flight deck like a hot knife through paper, disappeared into the hangar deck below, and exploded. The blast was instant and apocalyptic. Aviation fuel lines ruptured. Gasoline sprayed in every direction like high-pressure fountains. It ignited immediately. The first fireball swallowed rows of parked aircraft. A B-5N Kate torpedo bomber was lifted off its wheels by the shockwave, its Type 91 torpedo torn loose. The torpedo rolled across the tilting deck, its warhead struck a steel support beam, and detonated. 200 kilograms of high explosive ripped the aircraft apart. The explosion triggered the next plane's torpedo. Then the next. Then the next. Chain reaction. Within seconds, the entire hangar deck central section became an enclosed furnace. Temperature soared past 1,000 degrees Celsius. Aluminum aircraft skins began to melt and drip like candle wax. Rubber tires burned with thick, choking black smoke. Paint on bulkheads bubbled and caught fire before the flames even reached them. On the flight deck above, steel plates bulged upward from the pressure below. Flames shot through widening gaps like geysers. Men standing directly above the explosion simply vanished in fire before they could scream. In less than 90 seconds, the ship that had terrorized half the Pacific was burning from the inside out. And it was only the beginning. The worst was still to come. Smoke was already pouring from Akagi's midsection like a funeral pyre when the real nightmare began. Below decks, in the hangar, the temperature had become unlivable. Aluminum dripped from aircraft fuselages like slow silver rain. Rubber burned with thick, choking black clouds. Men who had been laughing and drinking tea an hour earlier were now running through corridors that felt like oven interiors. Petty Officer Mitsuo Fukita, the same man who had led the Pearl Harbor strike, was thrown against a bulkhead when the first bomb hit. Both legs snapped. When he came to, he saw fire racing along fuel lines like liquid lightning. Aircraft exploded one after another. Torpedoes cooked off with sharp, ear-splitting cracks. Screams were swallowed by the roar of flames and secondary detonations. On the bridge, Captain Taijiro Aoki stood motionless, face streaked with soot. He refused to leave. "This is my ship," he told his officers quietly. "I stay with her." Damage control parties, 120 men armed with hoses, foam extinguishers, and sheer willpower, pushed into the inferno from both ends of the hangar deck. They advanced step by step into heat so intense that paint on the walls ignited before the fire even touched it. Each breath felt like swallowing broken glass. Water from hoses turned instantly to scalding steam. Visibility dropped to 0. Then another torpedo detonated, the shock wave hurled men backward like rag dolls. Some never got up. Yet they kept going. Warrant officers led small teams deeper, shouting encouragement over the noise. They doused one patch of fire only for 3 more to flare up behind them. At 10:40 a.m., anti-aircraft ammunition began cooking off. Thousands of 25mm shells exploded like insane fireworks inside the ship. Red-hot fragments punched through steel bulkheads, sliced through fuel lines, started new rivers of burning gasoline. By 11 a.m., the situation was hopeless. Commander Nakajima reported to the captain. Fire spreading to new compartments. Casualties mounting. Many areas too hot to enter. Admiral Nagumo, standing on the smoke-filled bridge, received the same grim updates. His chief of staff spoke the words no fleet commander wants to hear. "Admiral, you must transfer your flag. We cannot command from here." Nagumo looked back at Akagi, his flagship, the ship that had carried Japan's greatest victories. Tears cut clean tracks through the soot on his face. "Forgive me, Akagi," he whispered. "I have failed you." Around noon he was ferried by boat to a destroyer. He never looked back again. Aoki stayed. He walked every accessible compartment, checking for trapped men, making sure no one was left behind. Engineering crews near the magazines worked in hellish heat, flooding compartments with seawater to prevent the main powder stores from detonating. Water boiled on contact with red-hot steel. Men suffered terrible burns but kept turning valves until the critical spaces were flooded. By 2 p.m. the fires were still winning. Parts of the flight deck had already collapsed into the hangar below. Black smoke towered hundreds of meters into the sky. At 4:30 p.m. another massive explosion rocked the entire hull. Captain Aoki finally gave the order everyone dreaded. All hands not required to keep her afloat. Prepare to abandon ship. The words spread like a wound. Men who had served on Akagi for years wept openly as they lowered lifeboats. Destroyers Erasure and Nowaki came alongside to take survivors aboard. Aoki made one last inspection. He checked compartments that were still reachable, listened for any faint cries. Only when he was certain no living soul remained did he step into a boat, the very last man to leave. As the small craft pulled away, he turned and looked at Akagi one final time. The midsection was an open furnace. Black smoke hid half the sky. "Sayonara, Akagi," he said softly. That night she burned like a ghost ship under the stars. Occasional explosions lit up the darkness. At dawn on June 5, the order came from Admiral Yamamoto far away on Yamato. "Scuttle her." 4 destroyers lined up 1,500 meters away. Torpedo tubes trained on the dying carrier. Sailors loaded the weapons with shaking hands. Many were crying. No one wanted to be the one to end her. At 5 a.m., 4 Type 93 long lance torpedoes, the best in the world at that time, streaked across the water. The first struck near the bow. A huge column of white water exploded upward. The second hit midships. The third and fourth slammed into the stern almost together. Akagi shuddered violently. She began listing hard to starboard. Seawater poured through the gaping wounds. The fires were finally drowned, but only because the ocean was claiming her. At 5:20 a.m., June 5, 1942, the Red Dragon rolled onto her side. For a few long seconds she seemed to hesitate, as if unwilling to leave the surface she had ruled for so long. Then she slipped under. Bow first. Bridge and island structure next. The flight deck, once covered with planes ready to conquer the Pacific, vanished beneath black water. Finally the great stern rose, propellers glinting one last time in the dawn light, before sliding down forever. Only ripples and an oil slick remained. On the destroyers every man stood at attention in total silence. Many saluted with tears running freely. They had just watched the end of Japanese carrier supremacy. Akagi took 267 men with her to 5,400 meters depth. Along with Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, Japan lost over 300 irreplaceable pilots and years of experience in a single morning. Midway was the pivot. From that day forward, the Pacific War turned, slowly, painfully, irreversibly. The Red Dragon was gone. But her story still burns bright, a reminder that even the mightiest can fall when pride blinds them to danger, when one small decision cascades into catastrophe, and when ordinary men show extraordinary courage right up to the final moment. Rest in peace, IJN Akagi, and all who sailed in her.